Back in 2017, I helped my best friend find his very first new car. He wanted something safe, reliable and dependable, and that also wouldn't break his budget. We went to lots of different dealerships. We ended up finding the perfect car, the Mazda 2. Flash forward to today and Mazda is still selling its third generation 2 here in Australia, and it's recently been updated for 2023. Despite SUVs being so popular here in Australia, I think small cars still have a very important role to play. They're efficient, they're cheap, and they're pretty safe, and they're also good for learner drivers. But the small car market is shrinking. Last year, Mazda sold around 5,000 of the 2 model. However, in 2018, it sold double that. Over 10,000 units were sold. So that brings me to today's car, the Mazda 2 GT, that starts at around $28,000 before on-road costs. But it's the most expensive the Mazda 2 has ever been. I want to find out today whether it's as good as my mate's car back from 2017, and whether it still has that small car charm. But before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe to Chasing Cars. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by So let's start on the design front for the new Mazda 2. What's changed over the old car? Well, all Mazda 2s now get LED headlights. The high-spec Evolve and GT variants get LED daytime running lights. And on the bottom 2 grades, you get a slightly different grille to this with more plastic. It's kind of got an EV feel to it, which I really like. This has got more of the traditional Mazda 2 look from days gone by. And also new are the 16-inch alloy wheels on either side of the car. They're a new design than before. And I will add one little cool feature. It's got a little red emblem there that shows that this is a facelifted car. And basically what that means is it sort of matches with the interior red contrasting. Very nice. Despite the somewhat shrinking small car segment, the Mazda 2 still has a few key rivals. The Toyota Yaris is the mainstay here, but it has been recently joined by a new generation of MG3, which offers hybrid power for the first time. MG's smallest car is priced at entry hybrid guise from $27,990 before on-road costs. There's also a new generation of Kia Picanto on our local shores, a hatch which is currently the cheapest new car you can buy in Australia, priced from a very competitive $17,890 before on-road costs. The Kia Picanto certainly makes this Mazda 2 GT seem like a lot of money for a small car in 2024. So what's it like inside the new Mazda 2 GT? Well, I actually like the cabin quite a lot. It seems pretty premium even for $28,000 before on-road costs. You've got a nice leather steering wheel, and these seats are pretty comfortable. They're a leather and suede mix, which is pretty cool. They've got a nice sporty sort of red contrast on them, which is very nice. And I just feel like the seating position is quite good, although it's a little bit high even for a small car. It just feels like the seat doesn't quite go low enough. And you also get this cool sort of Alcantara suede material on the dash, which is kind of very Porsche-like, but it's in a Mazda 2, so I'm not going to complain with that. Also, there's these jet turbine style air vents, which are really nice and easy to use, and they look cool as well. So in terms of technology, most things are run through this 7-inch central screen, which is also a touchscreen, but you can't use it as a touchscreen while you're driving, which is a little bit annoying. You have to use it through this rotary dial, which is very BMW-like. It works okay, but for the main usages, and especially through Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, it just doesn't work very well, this rotary dial. Now, this touchscreen also has wired Android Auto and wired Apple CarPlay. It works okay, but I just think the screen's too small. It needs to be a bit bigger in 2024. For the driver, the main instrument cluster is largely analog. You've got a big rev gauge right in the middle, which is not really that useful in an automatic, but you've got 2 small screens on either side. One shows how many kilometers you've driven and which gear you're in, and also on the right, you have your fuel gauge and your average fuel economy. So it's okay. I wish they had have updated that to something digital for 2024, but you know what, we can't have everything. Now, in terms of practicality and things that'll really make the difference, especially for a young buyer, you've got 2 USB-A ports right in the center here. You've got an auxiliary port if you want to play some music through, you know, an older phone, for instance. You've got your 12-volt plug. You also have 2 cup holders here in the center and a little bin behind there as well, which is really handy. On the sides, you've got decent door bins that'll fit a pretty decent sized water bottle, so that's good as well. All in all, the front seat and interior space of the Mazda 2 GT certainly feels premium enough for that $28,000 price tag. However, there are a few scratchy plastics around the place. All in all, a pretty good job. So what's it like in the back seat of the Mazda 2 GT? Look, this isn't the strong suit of the car. It's quite cramped back here. I don't have hardly any knee room. I've got toe room and a little bit of headroom, but I feel like the car's sort of coming back like this, and it's sort of clustering into the rear seats. You feel a little bit cocooned by it, and it's not the nicest feeling. Yes, you could put 2 adults back here with no problem, but it wouldn't be that comfortable, and I wouldn't be doing a road trip in it with 4 adults, for instance. Perfect for kids, not so good for adults. And back here, it is pretty basic. Even though this is the GT, this is the flagship car, you've still got sort of scratchy door cards, you've got some fake carbon trim here, which doesn't look too great, and you don't have any rear air vents or USB-C or A ports. So there's not a lot happening back here. So round the back of the Mazda 2, opening it up, you just have a simple manual tailgate. Inside, you've got 250 litres of storage space, which is pretty good. And underneath the floor is a temporary spare wheel. Now let's talk running costs for the Mazda 2 in 2024. The Mazda's covered by a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty. In terms of servicing, it'll need to happen every 12 months or 15,000 kilometres, whichever occurs first. Now, in terms of fuel economy, Mazda claims this car can do around 5 litres per 100 kilometres. However, we saw about 5.5 to 6 litres per 100 kilometres. Not so bad, it's still pretty frugal. So what's the Mazda 2 like to drive? Well, I've been driving it the last week and I've found it to be a really charming and enjoyable thing. I've got a real soft spot for small cars. They just seem to do everything right, they're perfect for the city, and I really can't do much wrong. So this Mazda 2 GT has a 1.5 litre inline 4-cylinder engine that makes 81 kilowatts and 142 Newton meters. Now those aren't huge outputs, but they certainly do enough because this car only weighs about 1,100 kilograms. And because of that low weight, you're able to really chuck the car around, and it's quite a nimble little thing. And I mean, in the city, it does most things very well. It's got quite soft and supple suspension. It's got a torsion beam rear end, but for the most part, it is a comfortable car in the city. And that's where I spent most of the time driving it. I drove from work to home, but I also did some longer commutes, such as on the highway and through outer Sydney. And this car seemed to do everything pretty well. It was a real 8 out of 10 sort of car in that respect. It's just, I love that small nature of it. I just can't get over it. I had a Kia Picanto long-termer. I absolutely love the thing. It was easy to park, easy to drive, and it was very well suited for young buyers. Now, this is the most expensive Mazda 2 that you can buy. I mean, in the hatch form at least. But I think it still does a lot of the right things, and it's still affordable enough for a young buyer. Now, if you are wanting to have a bit more of a keen drive, you like a spirited drive going up in the mountains, you'd think this car, maybe it's not so good. But I was surprised, and for this reason, it has a little button down here which you can press that says Sport. And you put it into Sport and it really changes the car. It actually feels more powerful in Sport than without it. I don't know why, but it sharpens up the throttle response and just makes this car really zing. And that engine, that 1.5 litre engine, just sounds pretty good when it's wrung out. But the one thing that's not so good about this engine is that it really, really works hard to get you up to speed. Now, this car has a 6-speed automatic transmission. You can get a manual option, and that is the sweeter option. But I do think this auto is pretty good. It's a torque converter auto, it's not a CVT, thank goodness for that. But you can tell that the transmission has really been tailored to be wrung out, revs right up to 6,000 RPM. And this happens a lot in traffic. You just go from a standing start and it just revs, as it's doing right now, up to about 4,000 RPM every time. You can't sort of short shift it, which is a real shame. And I think that's what takes away from the experience a little bit with this Mazda 2. Now, in terms of safety, it's really important with the Mazda 2. A lot of young buyers are going to be getting into this car. A lot of people's daughters and sons' first cars could be a Mazda 2. But the good news is that it is a very safe car. It's got 6 airbags, it's got autonomous emergency braking, it's got lane keep assist and blind spot monitoring, just to name a few. It's pretty well equipped for this price, and it should be. It's a small car for a young demographic. So I think that in general, the safety systems work pretty well. The lane keep can be turned off and it will stay off. And for the most part, the radar cruise control, which is only available on the GT, works well. Now, this car isn't currently rated by ANCAP, so it doesn't have an ANCAP safety rating. But with those safety features in mind, I think that Mazda has done a really good job putting safety into this car and making sure young buyers are safe on the roads. So what do I think about the overall driving perspective of the Mazda 2 GT? Well, I think back to 2017 when my friend bought his car, And it was fun then, and it's still a fun car now, and I think a lot of young buyers will really be able to appreciate this car as being safe, nimble, fun to drive, and engaging too. And even with the automatic, it's still a fun car. Yes, it might not be as fun as a manual that you can shift yourself, but Mazda only sells 5% of all Mazda 2s in manual. The rest are all automatic. So this is what the buyer wants, and I think that they're going to have a great time in the Mazda 2 going forward. Hopefully small cars continue, but we'll just have to wait and see. So what are my final thoughts on the Mazda 2 GT? Well, for the most part, this car is pretty charming and it's a lot of fun to drive. I had an enjoyable time driving it over the last week. It's just got that small car charm that I love, and it reminded me a lot of my Kia Picanto long-termer that I had last year. It's just a really enjoyable little package, but it's not perfect. I found that the Mazda 2's infotainment was particularly outdated now, and just that 7-inch screen isn't big enough in today's world. And the unfortunate fact that you can't use the infotainment touchscreen while you're driving is a little bit annoying, and I wish that you didn't have to use a little dial to change the screens and stuff. It's just a little bit overcomplicated, and I just wish that there was more functionality for the touchscreen. But the car is a good drive. It's got a zingy little engine that actually sounds pretty good when revved. It's just a shame that you have to rev it so much to get up to speed, even with its low curb weight. But I just wish the GT was available with a manual transmission. I just think it would be that next level of engagement and enjoyment. When my friend bought his first car, a 2017 Mazda 2, we thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. And well, the Mazda 2 in 2024 still carries a lot of that same flavor, a lot of that fun, and I think that a lot of people will enjoy this car as a first car. So the question I come back to that I started with at the beginning of this video is this car still as fun as it was in 2017? I honestly think it is. It's still got that charm, it's still got the appeal, and it's still pretty good value even though it's about $28,000 before on-road costs. SUVs may reign supreme, but I can tell you the Mazda 2 is just as fun for less money. But what do you think about the Mazda 2 in 2024? Let us know down in the comment section below, and while you're there, make sure you like and subscribe to Chasing Cars.